Dr. Wilmer Leon here, and welcome to another installment of My Final Point. Today, I want to discuss the day Santa really went black. Now, for those of you who have not heard the quote, let me give it to you now. For all the kids watching at home, Santa just is white. Santa is what he is. Just because it makes you feel uncomfortable doesn't mean it has to change. Jesus was a white man too. He was a historical figure. That's a verifiable fact, as is Santa, end quote. That's Megyn Kelly from Fox News on December 11th, 2013. Now, what prompted this ridiculous response from Megyn Kelly was the December 10th Slate.com article written by Aisha Harris entitled, Santa Claus Should Not Be a White Man Anymore, wherein Ms. Harris makes the point that as a black child, the public image of a white Santa caused her great confusion. For a child, imagery is very important. Quote, I remember feeling slightly ashamed that our black Santa wasn't the real thing. Because when you're a kid and you're inundated with the imagery of a pale seasonal visitor, and you notice that even some black families decorate their houses with white Santas, you're likely to accept the consensus view despite your parents' noble intentions, end quote. Now, when this story first broke, I wasn't going to write about it. As an African American, I could empathize with Ms. Harris's article. I found the initial discussion caused by Megyn Kelly's overreaction to be shallow and really quite frivolous. But as the days wore on, and I began to absorb more of Miss Kelly's ridiculous comments, I realized that I'd seen this type of supremacist attitude before. I also realized that honest analysis of Miss Kelly's comments had really not become a part of the mainstream ongoing debate or the dialogue. Now, when I was a child, my parents would decorate our house with a large, traditional white Santa. It was prominently displayed on the roof of our home next to the chimney and illuminated with a very large spotlight. After years of exposure to the winter weather, our Santa needed repair. My parents called upon a very dear family friend and artist, Mr. Jerry Goss Simpson, to give Santa a facelift. Now, Goss suggested to my parents, let's make Santa black. My parents agreed. Goss went to work, and the result drove many in the predominantly white community in which I was raised crazy. For years after Santa went black, one of the conversations at Christmas amongst white neighbors and passersby in the neighborhood would be, did you see the black Santa on that house in Land Park Drive? Why would anybody do that? Well, the answer to those questions was quite simple. It was a black family that owned that house. My parents and Goss never intended to make a political statement with the black Santa. They merely decided to have an image of Christmas that they and their children could identify with, an image that represented them. The key to my parents' decision and the link to Kelly's overreaction is that imagery is very important and images are really, really powerful. Megyn Kelly's overreaction to Ms. Harris's article really has nothing to do with, as Kelly said, quote, another person claiming it's racist to have a white Santa, end quote, because Ms. Harris never makes that claim nor even makes that inference in her article. Kelly's overreaction has everything to do with the power of imagery. This was Kelly's not so subtle defense of the psychosis of white supremacy, as it has been historically exercised through the imposition of white imagery as wholesome, good, and virtuous. The imagery of Santa, Jesus, and God are just three examples of this. In his book, Chains and Images of Psychological Slavery, Dr. Naim Akbar writes, the ultimate story is that the image or concept of God, being like a particular people, endows them in their mind with an unnatural perspective on themselves, and others. Akbar continues, the problem that had been created for the European American mind, which has led him to become an imperialist, a slave maker, a colonist, an oppressor around the world, is rooted in this idea that made him or her believe that he was the Caucasian image that he had identified as God. Now, it's the use of and belief in these images and the perpetuation of their converse that has led and continues to foster the negative stereotypes of people of color. White is good, black is bad. White people are safe, black people are criminals. White people are virtuous, black people are immoral. It's the belief in these images and the stereotypes that has led to racial profiling, driving while black, shopping while black, and stop and frisk. It's the belief in these images and stereotypes that led Oprah Winfrey to complain that a store clerk in Switzerland did not think that she could afford a $38,000 handbag, or college student Trayon Christian being arrested in Barney's in New York for purchasing a $350 designer belt with his own debit card, even after he showed identification to the store clerk and the police. They could not fathom the idea that a black college student could afford such an expensive item. Now, in her own subtle way, Megyn Kelly was defending the practice of racist imagery and stereotyping that led to the murder of Trayvon Martin and the shooting deaths of Oscar Grant, Sean Bell, Amadou Diallo, and police officers Cornell Young Jr. in Connecticut and William Wilkins Jr. in Oakland, California, just to name a few. My final point, imagery is important and images are powerful. Why was it such an issue at our house on Land Park Drive when Santa went black? As we celebrate this holiday season, what's wrong with Jesus being black? Newsflash, wait. If you believe in the Bible and not in Hollywood, I think he was. Just read Revelations chapter 1, verses 14 and 15, describing Jesus. His hair was like lamb's wool, and his feet or hands like burnished brass. Sounds like a brother to me. Merry Christmas, Megyn Kelly, and to all a good night. That's my final point.